It's rare that we see any shakeups at the running back position here in 2024. Running backs are just not getting injured at the same clip as previous years. That being said, once J.K. Dobbins went down with that injury, we're looking at Gus Edwards. We're looking at his backfield. We're trying to break it down to see who we want to pick up off the waiver wire and who we want to stash just in case there's a breakout. We're going to deep dive this backfield right now, but before we do, you need to click that subscribe button right now because we're doing deep dives every single day on these players. Those players who are rising the depth chart. If a trade or injury happens, we're going to do multiple deep dives on all the players to see what's going on with those players. And plus, you need to know whether or not you need to pick those players up. Click that subscribe button. Stop missing out. But J.K. Dobbins will miss some time due to the knee injury. So this is going to be multiple games. This is going to be for a bit, and this is going to be going into the fantasy playoffs. So now we're looking at an open backfield here that some fantasy gamers can use. Not all, because some of you guys are good at running back, and maybe you do not need a stash out of this backfield. Not everybody absolutely needs to make a move here, but a lot of people are thinking about it. So let's take a look at what the Chargers have here, because we got Gus Edwards, Kamani Vidal, Hassan Haskins. All three of these running backs have their own story and how they can be productive on this team and also how they can bust on your fantasy team as well. We're just giving it to you at both angles here, but J.K. Dobbins is going to be out for a little bit. Gus Edwards is the crafty veteran, productive last year with the Baltimore Ravens, can be productive in this offense with volume. 10.35 PPR fantasy points per this league here. 11 yards on 9 carries, but got that touchdown. Workhorse up the gut. A guy that can handle a large amount of workload. However, you look at how productive he has been throughout his career. He's a guy that can hold it down. He can hold it down for quite a bit. He's also been often injured, but Gus Edwards is a very efficient running back between the tackles. Not so much this year, more with the Baltimore Ravens. So this might be a situational issue with Gus Edwards as well. Something to pay attention to. But the one thing with running backs, with volume, you could be one of the worst starting running backs in the league and still get okay fantasy production on any given Sunday with enough volume, because you can volume into production, falling over the goal line, breaking free on a couple runs, catching a few checkdowns, and all of a sudden, you got 12 fantasy points and you're okay for the week. Gus Edwards has been in the league for quite a bit. However, when you're looking at his injury history, it's pretty in-depth. Something to pay attention to, and on top of that means you got to pay attention to this whole backfield. You definitely have to. And we said this going into the season, that the odds of this backfield, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, lasting the whole year without an injury is very high. It's hard to simulate this backfield in a season and not have an injury or two crop up. Gus Edwards missed some games. J.K. Dobbins is going to miss some games. We just knew this was on the horizon, and it could be again due to what we've seen from these running backs. But Gus Edwards is next in line for touches, getting volume, averaging 3.3 yards per carry, 32% share of the team's rushing attempts out of the backfield. But they like to use two running backs. They like to split it up. Hassan Haskins was in there last week, and Kamani Vidal was a healthy scratch. However, Vidal's probably going to get the call up, going to be getting some opportunity there. So there's something with his game that's different between Edwards and Haskins. We're going to talk about that soon. But when we're looking at Haskins, he's a Michigan man. He can grind it between the tackles. Not a great, tremendous talent, but we're not looking at talent here. We're looking at volume, and we're looking at opportunities to get volume on our fantasy teams if we need that at the running back position. We're looking at last week, J.K. Dobbins went out, averaging 6.7 yards per carry, 40 yards on 6 carries. Gus Edwards got the work. 9 carries, 11 yards, and a touchdown. It's not the greatest thing I've ever read off, but it happened. He got the work. That's the next man up. Hassan Haskins is the guy behind him that was getting the work. Good pounder between the tackles. Very productive at Michigan. He's a hardball guy. That being said, could be getting some opportunities in the future. And Hassan Haskins has not been productive at the NFL level. Not tremendously athletic when it comes to size of just athleticism, but we're big. We're a big pounder. We can grind it. We're very fluid when it comes to movement skills. That being said, We still haven't got it done at the NFL level, but he's a chip to place a bet on in deeper leagues. Or if you want the guy behind Gus Edwards, this could be a guy to look at. But Kamani Vidal's got a ton of upside. Good size, adjusted athleticism, more top-tier upside due to that. Also with his work in the passing game, also has some good size to him as well. A rookie who was very productive last year, also showed some production this year as well. Honestly, that Week 16, 13.1 PPR fantasy points, more than what Hassan Haskins has ever done in his total 3-year career in the NFL. He has not posted a game that good on his career yet. Kamani Vidal, 4.46 40-yard dash, good speed. Hammer between the tackles. He's very decisive, looks good with the ball in his hands. Another guy with a ton of upside. He's more like your upside play. Hassan Haskins looks like he's got more favor right now. He was the one that was in the lineup last week. But Vidal's more of your lottery ticket play out of this offense. And on top of that, the routes ran is a key indicator here that he might be getting some work, even with Haskins and Edwards there. 23 routes ran, and that's more than Edwards and Haskins combined. That being said, Kamani Vidal is probably going to be used in the passing game. He might get some checkdowns. He might get some targets downfield. We do not know. That is not a prediction. But when you look at this backfield and you start to organize it with how you want to place your chips and your bets, he's an upside play. Size, adjust, athleticism, good speed, and getting work running routes out of the backfield. J.K. Dobbins, 166 routes gone, 16.6 routes per game out of the backfield zapped, and Gus Edwards was barely running any routes per game, almost 1.8. That being said, Kamani Vidal might be getting some work in the passing game. Hassan Haskins has not ran his first route with the Chargers yet. That is another indicator there. Hassan Haskins is a good grinder between the tackles, can get you those red zone looks, can get you production in that standpoint. Don't sleep on him, but Kamani Vidal with that speed, explosiveness, and work in the passing game could be a cheap bet, especially if you got the roster space, your bench is deep enough to carry a guy like that. Gus Edwards, though, is getting the touches. When you look at the matchups coming up, we got some ugly ones. We got the Chiefs. We got the Falcons. So middle of the road or worse when it comes to allowing fantasy points to running backs. We got the Broncos too. You got the Buccaneers in the fantasy playoffs. You got the Patriots coming up. So some ugly matchups here for these guys. But on the flip side, if you're struggling with a running back and you need a running back that's getting 10 plus carries a game, you might be looking at Gus Edwards. If you're looking for an upside play here, when they're throwing the ball and they got to get creative against like the Chiefs, then you might be thinking about Kamani Vidal as a what the hell dart throw in your league, or a daily fantasy football option, not just a start or a stash, but maybe for daily fantasy football against the Chiefs, Broncos, some of these other matchups as a guy getting some targets in the flat that you can throw out there with a $3,000 some salary and just really jack up the rest of your roster. So we don't just talk redraft or 12-man league, 10-man league. We talk 18, 22 too when we're doing these videos. There's a lot of upside here. However, the matchups aren't great. I do not see Gus Edwards being a league winner for most teams unless you're really hurting for a running back that's getting volume. I see him crossing the goal line here and there due to volume. I see him getting some decent stat lines here and there to get you 10, 12, 13, 14 PPR fantasy points on a couple games. That could help you win your league, but I don't see him being that guy that comes out of nowhere being your league winner. The Chiefs are going to shut you down. The Broncos are going to shut you down. You got some weird game scripts coming up. You might be sharing the workload with some of these other running backs. You're not getting many targets out of the backfield. You're barely running any routes. That being said, the touches are something to chase. And you're looking at where he's ranked right now. He's ranked RB30 in the rankings. So there's 29 other running backs ranked ahead of him. And some of the guys below him for this week, you probably would rather have. So look at that. On top of that, for the long term of the season, there's guys behind him that you would rather have on top of that. So be selective. If I'm good at running back and I got a few good starters, say I'm 3 deep at running back and I'm just playing the matchups with them, then really I may be looking at some of the stash running backs instead, somebody with more upside. However, I might pluck them off waivers too. If one of the other managers that I'm competing with in the playoffs need a running back, then I might just pick them up just so they can't have have him too. That's something I might do just so they can't get those 10 PPR fantasy points. He may not go to the moon this week, next week, the week after, but I do not want my opponents feeling good going into this week or later on down in the season. You don't need him. You saw enough from Gus. He's not even averaging 4 yards per carry. You don't think you should pick him up. I don't think you need to pick him up, but there are some strategies where it might be a viable choice for you to do so. You're fucked at running back. You're not good at running back. You're deep at wide receiver. You could use another guy to play with when it comes to your matchups and lineups. You're going to pick him up. You're going to roll with it. However, Kamani Vidal has some upside. Hassan Haskins has some upside for you because now we got some ambiguity in this offense. So you're looking at everything. I'm not just talking about Gus Edwards. I'm talking about the whole backfield here. You got to be strategic going forward. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.